Welcome to Beyond the Mask. My name is Laura Artizone, and I'm filling in for the irreplaceable Sharon Pierce. Today's episode is a must-listen for every CRNA who's ever had to fight for their place at the table. We're diving into a high-stakes topic, conquering legal and political challenges to maximize and protect your scope of practice. From courtroom battles to legislative showdowns, the landscape of anesthesia practice is constantly shifting. And the threats to our autonomy are real, but so are the opportunities. In this episode, we'll explore how CRNAs can navigate legal complexities, build political muscle, and proactively defend the scope of practice we've worked so hard to earn. Because protecting our scope isn't just about defense, it's about leading with confidence, clarity, and purpose.
CRNA Financial Planning is a sponsor of Beyond the Mask podcast. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Plus, did you know listening to our podcast can earn you Class B credits? For details on how to submit, visit the CE credit section at beyondthemaskpodcast.com. Welcome to Beyond the Mask, innovation and opportunities for CRNAs and advanced practice nurses, with certified financial planner Jeremy Stanley and CRNA Sharon Pierce. Jeremy Stanley has worked with CRNAs for more than 23 years, and Sharon Pierce is a former president of the AANA and the NCANA. Join us as we leave the operating room and learn the latest in the CRNA and advanced practice nurse industries. Beyond the Mask starts in 10, 9, 8, 7.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura.
You're very welcome.
Did such a good job on
Thank
that.
you.
I'm excited to have you on the show with me
I'm
today.
excited to be here.
And we have Liz Bamgbose with us as well. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
Yeah, Liz has been on the show before, but
Yes.
never in person. So we get to do it in person.
This is very exciting.
Yeah, we're at the ANA meeting in Nashville, and we're lucky to get Liz to come in and talk to us. So, Liz, for those that might not know you, give them a little bit about your background.
Been a CRNA for almost 20 years now. I'm waiting for that 20-year sticker. I'm stuck on the 15-year sticker. But worked in many different settings, big hospital academic centers, and now actually own my own practice. I'm a co-owner of a group. Also heavily involved in education. That's my primary role at this point, is in the program. I've been a program director for 5 years, an assistant program director, and am now stepped down and I'm full-time faculty at the University of Southern California. About 10 to 12 years ago, I started getting really involved in a state association in California. And that was really my first entree into the political world of CRNAs. But I loved it. I loved not just CRNA politics, but politics in general and how the legislation works and how Congress works and Senate and everything under the sun about it. The good, the bad, and the very ugly that it can be is eye-opening, especially when it affects your livelihood.
Yeah. And it's one thing, for me being a non-CRNA to really understand the political side of being a CRNA is real. I have never been in an industry that was any more political than being a CRNA. Truthfully, it just blows my mind. And when I try to explain that to people, because they're thinking, they're just nurses that put somebody to sleep. I was like, oh, no. Let me explain to you, what they do and what they have to deal with.
I think the only people that would agree with you more is our lobbyist.
Yes.
They know that rope.
Well, I think it's because there's money involved, like lots of money
absolutely.
reimbursement. So that becomes fighting.
Yeah.
Well, if there was no money involved, then there would be a harmonious atmosphere between the ASA and the ANA and
exactly.
CRNAs and anesthesiologists. But you add the money and it goes out the door. And you know what? None of us can blame anybody for that. We are all trying to protect our own practices for sure. So, Liz, if a CRNA practices in a state with opt-out, can they practice independently in any setting?
Great question. The answer is maybe.
Okay.
Good non-committal
Good legal
answer.
question there. Yeah.
See what I'm working on my politics.
There you go.
Don't commit to a side. The reason it is a maybe is that it really depends on what you look like locally and what your practice looks like locally. And I say that's even more nuanced, that many CRNAs work in a multitude of settings at a single time. So they may work in an academic hospital setting on Monday, and even Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning, go work across the street, theoretically across the street in an independent practice setting. And that could be in an opt-out state. And in that opt-out state, if the institution that they work in on Monday says that they should have supervision per their bylaws or medical direction, then there's supervision and medical direction there. But the next day, if they're at another institution that that honors independent practice, they can practice independently.
It's kind of like the VA, right?
Very much.
I mean, it just blows my mind that you can have a VA facility that's in one side of the state that operates completely different than a VA facility in the other side of the state.
I mean, a little outside of opt-out, but what really blows my mind in the VA is that we have active duty CRNAs that are deployed and frontline, obviously independent practitioners, and they come home.
Well, you get dumb when you fly home.
Yeah, and they can't. I mean, that really is mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Liz, who governs nurse anesthesia practice in each state?
We have a couple of different things that govern. We have nurse practice acts in every state. And just to note, we don't have a federal nurse practice act. There is no such thing as a federal nurse practice act. It's state by state.
So it's fragmented.
Yeah. And those states, maybe it was written in the 80s, 70s, 60s, who knows? But
1800s.
The Nurse Practice Act was written at some point. And whether that's been modified or not is, really up to the state. What I have found is that for the most part, the Board of Registered Nursing in each state, which is who honors and regulates the scope of practice per licensure, education, et cetera, also, really regulates what's in that Nurse Practice Act and how they're going to interact with it with CRNAs. Most states within their Nurse Practice Act also have a nurse anesthetist portion or practice act or code or some sort of regulation within the Nurse Practice Act. That's kind of foundational in what you can do at the state level. Beyond that, of course, there are local regulations that, and when I say local, I mean your institution. And in the institution, those policies are really go by the name of bylaws. And the bylaws at your institution are defining of your scope. On an actual individual level, you're credentialed. And the credentialing you get at any particular institution matches or should match with your bylaws.
Should match is the key, right? So does CMS set standards of practice as well for CRNAs?
Yes-ish. See that? You're back to
there you go.
back to a
You may
political.
need to run for some sort of real position in government.
I'm working on it. I know some people that have run. I'm asking a lot of questions.
Good.
There you go.
CMS does not set a scope, but they do define what they believe should be available for scope for many practitioners, not just CRNAs, but specifically speaking to CRNAs, the default, quite unfortunately right now, the default is that CRNAs must work under the supervision of a physician. And the opt-out of that is that a governor in any state can write a letter with 3 components saying that they've consulted with the Board of Medicine, they've consulted with the Board of Nursing, they think it's right for the citizens, and they think that it's effective for the state. If they write that letter to CMS, they can opt out of the default of supervision. And that's where the opt-out comes in. Now, I just want to point out on that, for an opt-out letter to happen, they do not need approval by the Board of Registered Nursing or Board of Medicine in any state.
Oh, it's like an FY. It's an FYI.
Okay.
They need to consult with them. So that's political in and of itself. Is the governor friendly with the Board of Medicine or not? And the Board of Registered Nursing. CMS broadly defines CRNA scope as essentially living up to the expectations of your state Nurse Practice Act, and that is in alignment with education. So CMS says if you are educated and licensed and per your state regulations, everything in CMS goes back to state. Anything they say says we default to a state's regulations. but they do honor that CRNAs, without defining any particular procedures or any particular thing that a CRNA does. They don't say you can do general anesthesia, you can do regional anesthesia. They just say that you can practice within your scope as long as it aligns with state regulatory practice, which is mostly defined by Nurse Practice Acts.
Liz, would a federal opt-out help? Would it change anything? Many states have opted out. So what would a federal opt-out gain us?
This lives on a couple of different levels. On the opt-out, how we traditionally think of it, which is per supervision. On the supervision level, we would at minimum remove the default to supervision.
Okay.
So we would not have a default to supervision. We would have a default to full scope. But as I said, almost everything in Medicare, Medicaid land defaults back to state regulation. Now, what would benefit us is that Medicaid and Medicare are such big, big players, whether they're a primary insurer or a secondary insurer of any of our patients, that most, if not all, private insurers, we'll leave United out of the picture right now, most, if not all, private insurers look to Medicaid and Medicare to see what they're trending. And if they're trending towards opt-out and full scope, let's just call it full scope of practice, then they should fall in line. All that being said, these insurance companies could care less about full scope of practice. They want to know what they need to pay you and if it's going to be too much for them. If we have full scope of practice or opt-out federally, the reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid don't change because we already get commensurate reimbursement rates with physicians. If we get opt-out, it doesn't mean we're going to get paid more and that, they'll have to shell out more money or less. The reimbursement rates right now have parity for us across physicians and CRNAs. So that part is totally indifferent to them. When you move down to the state and mostly institutional level, the fight is really about reimbursement rates and how we're going to run our supervision models, how the hospital can or can't make the most money if they have supervision or don't. But on Medicare land, they don't really care. They're reimbursing us the same no matter what, whether we have opt-out or not.
Right. And I mean, it's also control. Obviously, your physician colleagues want that control and they want to be able to control that money flow and where it goes, obviously. So how many states have opted out now? Did Wisconsin just?
Yeah, I want to say 23.
20. I think we're up to 25.
25.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you get over half, it gets a whole lot easier, right? So,
Sure does.
Yeah.
So why does CMS care what institutional bylaws say regarding scope if they already recognize CRNAs as being able to practice independently?
Right. So to be a hospital that can receive Medicare funding, you have to be a part of conditions of participation. The hospital has to meet conditions of participation, which is basically like you can come to their party and play with them if you follow these rules. And the rules are very, very broad for conditions of participation. It's like, you need them, to have, emergency services if something happens to a patient, not emergency room, but emergency services available. You need to, mind infection control. You need to have, sometimes it can get a little nuanced in like patient to provider ratios, et cetera. Those type of things live under the conditions of participation.
It's a minimum set of requirements.
Minimum set to play in the playground with Medicare and Medicaid services. One of the conditions of participation is that every facility who participates in Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement must also have a med staff. And so any institution must have a med staff, and the med staff committee that has XYZ participants on it must set the bylaws for the institution. Now, they have not specified how often those bylaws have to be revisited. This in California, and what I've been hearing in other states, has become a big, big issue recently. We're seeing bylaws when we ask people to go look at their bylaws that are 20, 30 plus years old and haven't been revisited. Sometimes that's as sticky as they haven't added CRNAs into the bylaws since they started using them.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Sometimes they had CRNAs in their bylaws or listed them maybe as an allied health provider or some other form in their bylaws, but they didn't expand it to since they opened their obstetric service. So they haven't put in anything in their bylaws that would reflect that they can continue that practice as a CRNA in the obstetric service. I'm just giving examples. They don't have to be that specific. Bylaws can be broad. But as soon as they start getting specific and they don't say something you can do, it means you can't.
Is this why it's so important that we have CRNAs on bylaw committees and on med staff and hopefully voting members?
Yes, absolutely.
So they can be at the table.
And we don't think about this. We go in, when you're hired as a CRNA, in my experience at academic institutions, they might ask you, what else do you want to be involved in? You're thinking research, you're thinking like some evidence-based practice. No one is saying to the CRNA, we'd love to have you on med staff. Or, some part of our... It's
not sexy.
Yeah.
Doing clinical research is sexy. But I mean, honestly, what makes a difference in your practice is the bylaws, is what governs your institution and your local laws and policy.
And they don't talk about, on your bylaws, that's who governs your credentialing. And we all hate credentialing, but that's who governs it. Now, I can tell you in California, we have an issue right now because we are not eligible as CRNAs to be on our med staff.
Is that a California state law?
It's a California state regulation that physicians, surgeons, and podiatrists can be on med staff.
What about dentists?
There's another code that includes them, but not regulation. And so we're trying to get the Department of Public Health to better define if we can be involved in med staff. Now, there are exceptions. You can apply for exceptions to the rule, but how many CRNAs do you know that are applying to the state for an exception to sit on their med staff? It's not happening.
Are you a resident or CRNA looking to transition into independent practice? The AANA and Beyond the Mask are here to help you thrive as your own boss. Introducing the 1099 CRNA Institute, taught by Beyond the Mask host Jeremy Stanley and Sharon Pierce. This comprehensive educational series provides detailed guidance on business structure, legal and tax implications, and financial management tailored specifically for 1099 CRNAs. Lean into the feeling of freedom and embrace the opportunity to be your own boss with the AANA as your partner on this exciting journey toward independence. Enroll now and earn valuable continuing education credits as you chart a new course in your rewarding career. Visit aana.com/1099 to learn more and take the first step toward your new future. Remember, that's aana.com/1099 or click the link in the description of today's show. The 1099 CRNA Institute. Thrive as your own boss.
How did you get so smart on this, Liz? Full disclosure, Liz and I went to the same master's program. Liz and I briefly worked together at the same hospital many years ago. Liz and I both have twins that are the same age, so we might be the same person, but I did not learn any of what Liz learned. How did you get smart? Like, just by doing it? Or is there a book? Is there a... You should write one if you haven't.
Yeah, I'm a very, very curious person.
Like Ted Lasso. Be curious. Okay.
Very curious. I, really being involved in the state association and, very fortunately, we have good lobbyists in California. We have very good lobbyists. In my second presidency, when I went through the second time, we actually hired new lobbyists who were tigers, essentially, up in Sacramento. And I just couldn't stop asking questions. I will be honest, in that year, I fell under like really heavy political attack from the physicians, even in my place of work. It made me want to know everything I could do to protect myself and protect others, because I was thinking, man, I'm just volunteering to be president.
Right.
I'm not even getting paid to be attacked. At least I
just goes with the job, right? Yeah.
So why would someone else want to volunteer to take this job as president of any association if everything they do is under attack? It made me even, increasingly more curious. That being said, I do stay heavily involved in state and national association work for the ANA and CANA in California. And I think the only way you really know this is it's another language. You have to be talking this language. I mean, I talk this language all week, every week to our lobbyist practice, our board. I fortunately had some amazing mentors, and they told me the only thing I could do for them is just to make sure I teach the next person. So I've kind of taken on that mission, which was, one of the reasons I really wanted to speak about this at Congress was that I didn't know any of this. And I know for sure of the 64 or 5,000 plus CRNAs and NARs out there, there's no way I was the only one that didn't know.
No, not by far. So let's say, we achieve federal opt-out, but a hospital still has supervision rules. Can a CRNA practice independently?
Not at that institution.
Not at that institution.
That was the only non-wishy-wash answer that you
That was
and
spot
you know
on.
What? You know what? That answer is important because that answer has opened big, big doors in Washington, D.C. for me. Because when we go into these offices and we talk about federal opt-out and getting rid of CMS regulation, and right now, that's an opportunity for us with DOGE and everything else that's going on with deregulation, especially when we go into offices where there's ties to physicians, whether husbands, kids, nephews, whoever their tie to physician is. I just remind them, this is to remove a default for supervision, but this in no way, by no means, defines what any institution wants and should do. Every institution has the choice of whether they want supervision, direction, independent practice, or a mix of both.
That's couching the message really well.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to change it for you, but yeah, that's great.
And that gives them ammunition to go back to their physician colleagues who come in and say, oh, no. If you give those nurses opt out, they're going to be running wild in the hospital.
Oh, we're not changing yours.
If I give them permission to do that, you can still tell them they're supervised where you work.
Wow, no, I didn't know that either.
Change the message.
I had no idea about that, Liz, till you just said it. As much as I've been around this topic, I did not know that. Interesting. Still learning.
Liz is teaching us all.
I love it.
Yeah. Show me those vocal cords.
Liz, is this too overwhelming to teach this level of regulations and rules and laws in our nurse anesthesia programs when we're also trying to, teach them how to do VL, POCUS, 1,000 other things?
I don't know, because I think of myself as a student, just a couple of years ago, but I think of myself and it wasn't a priority for me to know it. For me, the program, knowing who my program directors were, it probably was a priority. I just didn't take it on. But in my priorities, it wasn't. So I just, kind of listened and went on my way. Now, I know politics were different 20 years ago, but I think the best thing we can do is, and the way I feel like I've made a good example, is to be an example. And I'm very, very open with the students and the residents at USC about the work I do on policy, when I'm going to Sacramento, what meeting I'm going in, because it's a whole nother world, even understanding what's a committee, what's BMP? BMP, that's like an acronym that doesn't live in anesthesia world. That's, business and professions, but we just throw around, we're going to BMP, we're going to appropriations, we're going here. That's a whole nother language they have to learn on top of anesthesia. I don't know. But I think by leading with example of, I'm doing this work, I'd love to take you with me when you're ready, and just throwing the language out there so it doesn't sound so foreign is just one way we can start.
I think that's the key, Liz. What you said is inspiring. Not every student may be ready right now, but you are leading by example, inspiring them. For those that are interested in that aspect, can seek you out, and introducing the language so that it's totally not foreign to people.
And I think a lot of, I hear this from a lot of CRNAs as well. I mean, they truthfully just don't want to have anything to do with politics. On any level. And I think you find students that don't as well. I mean, they'll do enough that they have to do, but if you push it too hard, you're going to kind of turn them off from ever wanting to be involved in that. So I think it's a double-edged sword. I think you've got to educate enough, but not over-educate, if that makes sense.
I mean, I don't just in my personal life, I don't like politics.
Who does? You have to be crazy to like politics now, right?
It scares me. Even like having kids in school, I don't even really want my kids going around people like right now in today's political climate. I don't really care for people to know what side of the table I'm on, because growing up in my whole life, the way we were raised in our house was like, you can believe in whatever you want, but you better be nice to everyone.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I still feel that way now. I don't see the need to get so extreme on any extent. And to your point, if you get super extreme and say, hey, look, if you're not paying attention to policy and politics in our profession, then you're not advancing us.
Right.
There's many, many ways to be involved. And some of it's just being a member of the AANA.
Yeah.
If you're just a member of the AANA, you're involved.
Yeah. I've heard Sharon say that so many times.
And when you're ready to be a voice, then be a voice. But that might not be today.
Hi, this is Jackie Rolls, President and founder of Our Hearts, Your Hands, a global support anesthesia community. We'd like to thank all of our prior donors and also say that we are accepting donations, welcome donations, to send a nurse anesthetist or even a nurse from a low resource country to get further academic education or attend professional conferences or even equipment for some companies. Thank you so much for your support.
I think you're so right. I think there's so many ways you can be passionate about being a CRNA, whether it's educating, whether it's giving money, even simply as that. But not everybody can do everything and be excited about everything. You got to find something that you're passionate about, because that's important.
And legal and politics, most people aren't passionate about.
Well, thank God we have Liz for that. Is there a checklist that CRNAs should consider when trying to understand their practice and scope in different settings and states?
Ideally, yes. I mean, ideally, when you do go for that job or you change that position, you should ask for your bylaws and see what they look like. And it's not a threat to an institution. Now, it may feel like a threat because people are like, oh my God, the IRS is here looking at my paperwork. That's what it feels like to an institution. But, you're really just asking like, hey, am I within scope of working here? Where I have seen that to be the most important is the hospitals and institutions that have less resources. So at our big academic medical centers, I am sure those bylaws need and should be updated. But there's probably a compliance officer. There's probably someone taking a look at bylaws relatively frequently. I mean, that may be biannually, but relatively. You go out to some of these rural hospitals, like I said, those bylaws may not have been touched for 20 years. And I have personally come across CRNA practices where the Department of Public Health comes in looking at one thing, maybe something happened in the ER, they pull out the bylaws, and all of a sudden they start uncovering all these other things, and they're like, well, you have CRNAs here, they're not even in your bylaws, or you have CRNAs here, and now when you talk to CRNAs, they'll say, oh, no, we've been here 20 years and we've been doing it all this exact thing all along. It's like, well,
they get themselves in trouble then.
Be real careful because you've actually been outside. It's not to say you're not educated to do it. It's not to say you can't do it and you're probably the best at it. It's to say it's not written on a silly piece of paper that the government approves saying that you can do it. So ideally, ask for your bylaws. The other thing that I think is kind of a backdoor way to figure it out is when you get your credentialing paperwork, we just like check. I want privileges to do all these things. Make sure that you are actually checking off everything you have the capability to do. So typically, Jeremy and our credentialing will get a paper that's like general anesthesia, regional, invasive lines, local, like all sorts of things that you're like, I wouldn't even use that at this institution. Check it anyways. Because if you ever need to, you have to be credentialed for it.
Huh. I didn't realize that. I thought it was just a blanket.
I mean, I'm sure there's some blanket check marks, but for the most part, yeah, the credentialing's pretty specific, more specific.
So I guess what we're saying from all this is legally and politically it matters. Understand it. And if you don't want to be involved at that level, get involved at some level so that people like Liz, who's a nerd about this stuff and loves it, can do it. Right? Yeah. I think that's what we're hearing here.
That, and the only other thing I would add is find out who your practice division is in your state. I have made a big effort in this past year because we've really been under fire in California by just like a really backdoor way of getting to CRNA practice by physicians. They've been going in through the Department of Public Health. And what I've been doing is saying like, look, here's my phone number. Please give my phone number to your C-suite, even if you're not in the C-suite, because most often the C-suite at these hospitals, they want to do the right thing and they just need someone to talk to figure out how to write the bylaws. So get in touch with your practice division, know who to call when you see the Department of Public Health at your door for something else. Use them as your resource. Most likely everyone on a practice division in your state understands this.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great information, and I think that's a great place to conclude here. But we want to thank you for being on the show, Liz. Thank you for all the good work you do. And Liz, like as I mentioned earlier, serves on the foundation board with me, and then obviously we've heard about all the other good work that she's doing out in California and advocating for CRNAs. So we want to thank you for that. And
Liz for state senator 2027?
I don't know. Maybe so. She's lighting up over there.
I will donate.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure.
Laura, I think it's a wrap.
I think it's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Mask. If you enjoy the show and want to help us grow, the best way to support us is simple. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, share the show on social media, and tell your friends. Your word of mouth is what keeps us going strong. We're proud to consistently rank in the top 50 medical podcasts nationwide and to be #1 in the CRNA community. All thanks to listeners like you. Your support helps us stay there, and we couldn't do it without you. We'll see you on the next Beyond the Mask.